Hello and welcome to the show. Very nice to have your company. Ahead, we're going to be chatting with ARN's CEO, Kieran Davis, about the recent radio ratings and, importantly, his newest radio entrant into the Melbourne market. Plus, latest developments on the Network 10 sales process. All that is ahead for you. But without any further ado, the first radio ratings survey for 2015 is out. An FM breakfast contest, some new entrants to mull with my co-host, James Manning, editor and publisher of Meidaweek. James, welcome to you. By definition, it is the first of 8, correct? Rather curiously. We only get 8 in a year.
That's it.
Such as it is.
It's monitored sort of right across the year, but they only do the results on 8 separate days. Some people like that, some people don't, you know, but it gives you time, you know, but you can do a lot of knee-jerk reactions when you get almost too much data. So this gives you a good indication of the trend right through a whole period.
And this is simply what? Who's up, who's down?
Yeah, absolutely. They get a lot of other... We just usually talk about share, but there's lots of other things like time spent listening, which affects your results, the total number of audience you get, things like that. But the market usually just looks at the total share for the survey. And as you said, the first one of the year, lots of interesting things to look at. I think during the year, people get what's called a wave, so you get a bit of an indication how you're going midway through. This doesn't happen, I don't think, in the first survey. So a lot of people are very apprehensive about the results.
Is it skewed by the fact on holiday, just as you tend to read different material, you might pull out Ken Follett, whatever you might pull out?
Look, I've always said, mainly because I like getting time off myself, that maybe starting in January, you know,
and half the lawyers are away, for instance.
Yeah, but then again, I think there's also the other argument that people are advertising and they feel like they should be, you know, accountable to the advertisers for most times of the year.
Okay. We will look further into that in just a moment, but for now, importantly, 12 months ago, we spoke with our next guest. We even spoke with him a little after that as well, indeed, just prior to Christmas. But the 12-month anniversary is because that was then the discussion of the debut of KISS 106.5 in the Sydney market, the highly publicised poaching of Carl and Jackie O from Today FM. This year, by contrast, all eyes on the new KISS station in Melbourne and its performance. Well, Kieran Davis, CEO at ARN, has promised joining us now. Warm welcome to you.
Afternoon.
Just like we were saying on radio ratings early days, put this into context. What's the pulse check like this early on in that market? Expectations met, or you're kind of you're staying awake at night?
No, very definitely on target.
Right.
Melbourne market is incredibly difficult, incredibly tight, as yes, Tuesday's results showed. There's 6 stations within 0.7 market share points, so it's incredibly competitive. Our goal for this year was actually to embed the new breakfast show with Matt Tilley and Jane Hall, and the new drive show with Husey and Kate, and build it up as the year went on. So we're incredibly pleased with the start we've had, and we're in no doubt that we're in for a big fight down in Melbourne.
Kieran, we saw interesting play in Sydney when you launched. Both your stations did very well. Started a little bit differently in Melbourne. Your sister station Gold has gone down a little bit. Does that mean you'll change the strategy perhaps, or is it still too early to do that and you'll wait for a bit longer?
No, we're very confident in the strategy we have with Gold, similar to WS. Books go up and down, as all radio broadcasters will tell you, so we're not in any way phased. We stick to the strategy that we have. We're on course to what we want to achieve.
Yes.
How would you describe that strategy even nationwide? Or does it have to kind of inevitably be tweaked for these different audiences? I mean, that's the thing. You've got a one-size-fits-all overarching vision. How do you get everyone into that?
I think the beauty of radio is the fact that it is live, but more importantly, it is local. So breakfast shows are, you know, all broadcasters have local breakfast shows. People wake up in the morning, they want to know what the Melbourne traffic is like. They want to know what happened in Sydney last night. And the success of a radio station is built from its breakfast show. And we have to have a live and local breakfast show. Yes, there's an overarching brand in the KISS brand that it is, and we've rolled out that brand into Adelaide and Brisbane as well, and we will probably look to do that in the Perth market as well, where we just acquired 96 FM as well.
Let's go across into AM land. Here we've got 4KQ and Cruise 1323. The notion being, though, a conversion into an FM licence. If you go back in time, I mean, this occurred. Could it occur again? and under what circumstances?
Do you ever dream that
Yeah.
might happen one day? That
We'd like to go back 20 years and get an FM license for them, but I think spectrum is quite limited, so the chance of converting an AM to an FM is not going to happen.
So technically it's just not possible, regardless of what the policy...
But they're incredibly strong stations in their own right, and a lot of the work that we do from our social and digital asset perspective is driving those audiences into platforms such as iHeartRadio, where we know we can grow the audience, and we can grow it a lot more effectively than we can on AM.
Is it ridiculous to think you could ever go 1-2 with an FM and an AM station?
It's not ridiculous. It's a long way away, I think, but it's not ridiculous because it just shows that, you know, the format, because we test music in all markets very strongly for all our brands, and when you get your music right and you have your breakfast shows right and you get a drive show right, you've got a very powerful station, and whether that's on AM or FM, people actually buy into the personalities and brands that you have on air.
Yeah. What can you...
Well, I was just saying, you seldom, though, I mean, a layman would say, correct me if I'm wrong, FM is the destination for music. I mean, you're not going to get that richness. It's just not possible. How do you kind of counter that in terms of the psyche, the psychology?
So there's different platforms coming on board now, but yes, FM is for music. The sound quality is a little bit better than it is on AM. AM is perfect for sport and talk and news, and it's incredibly strong in Australia. It's one of the strongest bands around the world, the AM band, for news and sport. But obviously the output from a music perspective, the audio has to be a lot better, and that's why you tend to traditionally see music formats on FM.
Maybe quickly, before we look at each market, just ask Kieran about revenues. How's the year going for ad revenues for the radio sector?
We've had a very incredibly successful last year where we were up 18%, well ahead of market. The market overall is doing exceptionally well, and I think, you know, the fact that we're talking so much about radio is very good for the radio industry. The fact that it is so competitive is very good for the radio industry. We're all spending on marketing, we're all spending on personalities, and that's good for advertisers as well. So the market is up about 5% year to date, which is very good. We're expecting double-digit growth this year as well, which on the back of last year.
You're not going to get too dominant in some markets, maybe Sydney, and where you'd like a bit more competition to keep the advertising sort of revenue bubbling along?
No, we want dominance, so we do. That's what we're all about. You know, we're the #1 network around the country, and we're here to stay and play that game.
Yeah.
Let's keep you with us because we want to break down, if we can, these the radio ratings that we talked about at the start. Let's start with Sydney, James, and this idea of the imminent merger.
It's just interesting to hear Kieran's thoughts too. I mean, it's been given the OK, the 2GB, the Macquarie and the Fairfax merger, those two AM stations. There'll be an AM station on the market. Is that going to have much impact for the market in general, do you think? And is it going to be hard to sell an AM licence?
I don't think so. I think there's a lot of interest already being shown, and obviously we were very pleased from our acquisition perspective in Perth that the Macquarie-Fairfax merger went ahead. But I think, you know, it's incredibly strong. The output is incredibly strong. AMs are #1 in a lot of the markets. So, you know, there'd be no problem trying to sell that AM licence.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, but that's the irony, isn't it? If it was an FM land, that's, you know, again, presents its own issues, but
like the price differential is going to be
huge,
significant.
Yeah.
It will, but equally, when you have a radio station, whether it's AM or FM, and you get it profitable, it's a very good multiplier effect from an investor perspective. It's an incredibly powerful investment.
Yeah.
Then the sense is, I mean, picking when it is at that ripe for picking moment. What do you really sort of say it comes down to?
You would look at trends from a ratings perspective. You'd obviously look at personalities because, as we saw with Kiss 106.5, audiences do follow personalities. So you would look at how the brand is tracking, how revenue is tracking, but also then you would look to the next 2-3 years, how the demographics are going to change. And that we're very confident from a KISS perspective that we've landed in a spot whereby we're #1 25-54. We know our sweet spot from an audience perspective, and we've got marketing and content plans to roll out over the next 24 months.
Then we go into Melbourne because you said at the start of the show, you used the word new twice in regards to your breakfast and your drive talent. So how long, because in magazine terms, and you know this, James, how long do you give something that's new time to bed down before you pull the rug, proverbially? What's the
station in Brisbane that knew until quite recently, didn't you? I think it was new 93.7.
Well, yes, title though.
Probably called that for a decade, wasn't it?
Well, it's like New Labour, isn't it?
Well, I think the important thing is from 97.3, it was always 97.3, so the brand was never going to change. I think when you're changing a brand, you've got to give it a period of time of 2 to 3 years. I think if you look at a breakfast show, you certainly have to invest the time, the money and the marketing over a 2-3 year period.
Does that include the talent?
Absolutely.
So the talent are there, come what may.
Yeah. But to be honest, within 3 or 6 months, if it's not moving, then you've got a problem.
Right. And then what do you do at that point when you acknowledge that you've got a problem, but actually, by the same token, you're saying 2 to 3 years is the industry horizon?
When we had Mix 106.5 in Sydney, we had 3 breakfast shows in 3 years. And it's a question of trialling talent behind. It's a question of seeing what talent is out there, knowing your demographic and knowing your audience, but also, importantly, bringing advertisers with you when you're going through those changes, and we're not seeing that at the moment.
Just quickly on this competition, Melbourne, we talked about Melbourne a bit. Let's roll it into Brisbane as well. Southern Cross's stereo is a much stronger opponent down in Melbourne, I think, than probably Sydney. And in Brisbane, Nova have been very strong, but fallen back a little bit now. I know you don't like talking about competitors, but they do keep you on your toes in different markets.
Yeah, up to this year, I think Brisbane was probably one of the most competitive that there was. And you will find, as the surveys go from 1 to 2 to 3, that there will be ups and downs. But, a good start of the year for our station, 97.3 there.
Yeah, okay.
Talking Adelaide, thoughts, the composition of that market, changing the name.
Yeah, changing the name.
In particular.
The Southern Cross Stereo has changed the name. You've done it successfully. Nova did it quite successfully with Smooth, but it's not always easy, is it?
It's not just a matter of changing your name and doing branding. Actually, you've got to know who your audience is. You've got to have a very strong breakfast show. You've got to have a very strong output throughout the day. And I'm not sure that Hit have done that just yet, but no doubt they will work hard on it.
We've got less than a minute now. This is kind of slightly from left field, but it does relate because you are who you are in terms of leading the organisation. Big problems at the BBC with Top Gear. It goes without saying. We're going to bring this forward. It's going to be part of a later discussion, but I want to get your pulse check on it. What do you do when you lead the organisation? Because the criticism is that this problem, it's not akin to being a Forex dealer. You don't discipline someone who's ultimately... Exactly.
Right.
Clarkson's an entertainer. It's about managers being able to manage egos, flare-ups. So it goes, so it goes. It comes with the territory. Has this been an abject failure in management? Never mind what Clarkson's done.
I think it's very important when you're dealing with talent that actually you have an ongoing day-to-day relationship with them and that you manage that relationship extremely closely. And I think, our national content director, Duncan Campbell, is exceptionally good at managing that. And, if there was a failing at the BBC, it may be that they just didn't manage Jeremy too well. And that's why you get these explosions and these bust-ups. But if you're on top of it day to day, these things shouldn't happen.
So the moral of the story was pretty much the producer should have made dinner or organised dinner.
But the BBC chairman should have taken Jeremy out to dinner.
All right, exactly. OK. And just as a sort of an aside, would you say the show now survives, given that it seems to have been all about Jeremy? Do you think there is life after Jeremy for Top Gear?
The show will survive.
You think you're confident it will?
In today's digital world, the show will survive whether it's on the BBC or not.
OK. With Clarkson fronting or not?
Absolutely.
OK. Appreciate all those insights.
Thank you.
OK. Kieran Davies there from, of course, we'll bring you the very latest on all of those ratings, etc., etc., etc. James, we'll take a break. We will. We will be back in just a tick. Do stay with us. Coming up, Talking 10, Foxtel and Discovery launching another takeover offer. What's at stake? Find out next.